That ceiling that you'll never break. That risk they say don't ever take.
Sometimes life throws things at you without asking permission. You can fight them, you can complain about them, you can spend years wishing things had happened differently, or you can deal with what shows up. I've always been the second kind of person. I don't wait for perfect timing or sit around hoping for a sign from fate. If I want something, I go after it, even if it means facing disappointment, discomfort, or hearing no from the people whose approval matters most to me. I wasn't born that way. That mindset grew over time, shaped by a childhood in which survival and success were treated as one and the same. My name is Dani Rivera. I'm light-skinned, Dominican, and Panamanian, born in Brooklyn and raised between different cultures, expectations, and 1,000 unspoken rules about what a successful life was supposed to look like. My parents worked hard so I could have opportunities they never had, but there was always a catch. The future they imagined for me came with a blueprint, a respectable job, a reliable paycheck, something easy to explain to relatives at family parties, something safe. I wanted something else, the stage. The first time I stepped onto one, something clicked inside me. Acting wasn't just performing. It wasn't pretending. It was freedom. The moment I stepped into another character's shoes, the world got bigger. Every script felt like a doorway. Every role felt like permission to become someone brave enough to say things I wasn't. When I acted, I felt alive. More than that, I felt like myself. My father never understood that. My dad, Javier Rivera, came to the United States from Panama carrying one suitcase and enough determination to outwork anybody who got in his way. He met my mother in Brooklyn while she was studying nursing. Mom's family came from Santo Domingo. Like Dad, they believed in stability first. Dreams came later, if they came at all. My mother has been a nurse for over 20 years. She works long shifts and comes home exhausted. Her feet ache, her back hurts, and yet she's proud of every minute of it. Helping people and sacrifice matter to her. And the exhaustion itself feels like proof she's spent her life doing something worthwhile. My parents believed education was the path to security. A degree meant survival, a career meant protection. Dreams were fine, as long as they came after something dependable. For as long as I can remember, my father had already decided what my future would be. Nursing. Not maybe nursing. Not consider nursing. Nursing. The way other parents might talk about the weather. Certain. Unquestionable. Done. It didn't matter that I got lead roles in school plays, that directors remembered my name, or that standing ovations made me feel like my ribs couldn't contain my heart. To him, acting was a hobby, a cute one, a temporary one, something I'd eventually outgrow. And for a long time, I let him believe that. Then junior year happened. That's when the scholarship flyers started appearing. Every few days, my mom would come home from work carrying another stack of nursing programs, medical schools, and healthcare scholarships. She highlighted deadlines in yellow marker, circled important sections, and left everything neatly arranged on the kitchen counter. Like the flyers could slowly hypnotize me into becoming someone else. Meanwhile, I kept an NYU application open on my laptop, hidden beneath other tabs, a secret glowing quietly in my bedroom. My best friend Chloe knew about it. Of course she did. Chloe knew everything. We'd been inseparable since middle school after my parents moved us from Brooklyn to New Jersey. Unlike me, Chloe genuinely wanted to become a nurse. She had the patience for it, the discipline, the focus. Honestly, she'd probably be amazing. Her real talent, though, was hair. Girls lined up during lunch for braids, touch-ups, edge work, or whatever they needed. She moved with confidence, like her hands always knew exactly what they were doing. Half her wardrobe paid for itself, the other half probably paid for somebody else's. One night near the end of junior year, Chloe and I sat in my room scrolling through NYU's performing arts program. My heart raced every time I looked at it, not from fear, but from possibility. Then my bedroom door opened. Dad stepped inside, fresh off a week-long trucking run to California. His jacket smelled faintly like diesel fuel and motel detergent. He looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that comes from working hard enough to believe you've earned the right to worry about everybody else's future. A kind of love that shows itself in worry, not words. "What are you girls doing?" he asked. Chloe grinned immediately. "Mr. Rivera?" He pointed at her. "No. What? You only get the chocolate after you answer my question." She laughed. Every time Dad came home from a route, he brought us weird chocolate bars from random places. It was our thing, a little ritual, proof he'd been thinking about us while he was gone. "I got strawberry chocolate this time," he said. "White chocolate drizzle." Chloe gasped dramatically. "Okay, that's actually crazy." Then his attention shifted toward my laptop. His smile faded. "What's this?" My stomach dropped. I already knew. NYU's logo glowed brightly from the screen. The secret was over. "Dani?" I slowly lowered the laptop. "Yeah. What am I looking at?" I swallowed. "I'm applying." "Applying for what?" I forced myself to meet his eyes. Performing arts, silence, acting. The word hung between us. Dad blinked once, then again. What do you mean by acting? I want to audition. Dani, his voice sharpened immediately. No. My pulse jumped. What do you mean, no? I mean, you're going to nursing school. Dad, no. The room felt smaller. Chloe shifted uncomfortably beside me. I could already feel where this was headed. Dad, acting isn't just some random idea. It is a random idea. No, it isn't. Then what is it? It's what I want. The words came out louder than I intended. His expression hardened. What you want doesn't always matter. I stared at him. The sentence landed like a slap. Chloe looked down at the floor. Nobody spoke. Finally, I said quietly, that's your dream. What? Nursing. I stood, my hands shaking. But it's your dream, not mine. The room exploded. Dad stepped forward. And what exactly do you think happens after acting? I work. You struggle. I'll figure it out. No. His voice echoed against the walls. No daughter of mine is going into debt for a hobby. A hobby? I laughed once, disbelief and anger colliding all at once. You've watched me perform for years, and I've supported you. You recorded every show. Because I'm proud of you, then why don't you believe in me? His jaw tightened. For the first time, I saw something underneath the anger. Fear. Real fear. Because to him, acting wasn't a career. It was uncertainty. It was a risk. It was everything he'd spent his life trying to protect me from. Before either of us could say another word, the front door opened. Mom walked in. She took one look at our faces. What happened? Dad pointed at my laptop. Tell your daughter. Mom set down her purse. Dani? I looked at her desperately. A tiny, stupid part of me hoped she'd understand. I want to study acting. Her expression changed instantly. Not anger, disappointment, which somehow hurt worse. You can take acting classes. Mom, as electives. The hope disappeared immediately. Your major needs to be something practical. I looked from one parent to the other, waiting, hoping, begging for one of them to meet me halfway. Neither moved, neither bent, neither gave an inch. Then Dad delivered the final blow. If you choose acting, the college fund is gone. The room went silent. My stomach dropped. What? You heard me? Dad? I am not paying for a degree that can't support you. The words came out cold, certain, final. I'm not paying for a hobby. The words settled over the room like wet concrete. Nobody spoke. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard him. Maybe this was just another argument. Maybe we'd cool off and come back to it later. But one look at his face told me otherwise. He meant it. Every word. I looked at my mother. She avoided my eyes, and that hurt more than Dad's ultimatum, because if she didn't fight for me, then I would be standing alone. Dani, she said carefully, your father and I only want what's best for you. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. What's best for me? Yes. Or what's easiest for you to explain to everybody else? Mom's face tightened. Dad folded his arms. You think this is about appearances? No, I shot back. I think it's about control. The silence that followed was immediate and dangerous. Dani, the warning in Dad's voice was unmistakable, but I couldn't stop. Not anymore. You already decided my future years ago, because somebody had to. I didn't ask you to. No, because you're 18 and don't understand how the world works. The words stung. Maybe because part of me worried he was right. I had no guarantees, no backup plan, no certainty, just a dream, but it was mine, and that mattered. Eventually, Chloe stood slowly, like somebody navigating a minefield. I'm gonna go. Nobody stopped her. She grabbed her backpack and slipped out the door. The second it closed, the room felt even smaller. The argument continued for almost an hour. Voices rose, doors slammed, tears appeared and disappeared. Nothing changed. When it finally ended, we were standing exactly where we'd started, except now there was an ultimatum sitting between us, nursing or nothing. A month later, I compromised. At the time, I convinced myself it was maturity. Adults compromised. Adults made sacrifices. Adults found ways to keep families together. So I applied to NYU as a pre-med major with a minor in performing arts. The deal wasn't ideal. It wasn't fair, but it kept the peace. At least that's what I told myself. The acceptance letter arrived 6 months later. Both Chloe and I got in. Dad celebrated. Mom cried. Family members called nonstop. Everybody talked about my future like it had finally fallen into place. Nobody asked how I felt about it. I smiled anyway. I was good at that. The compromise got me into NYU. It also got me stuck. 2.5 years later, I was barely hanging on. From the outside, things looked fine. I went to class. I earned decent grades. Sometimes. I stayed out of trouble. I followed the plan. The problem was that every part of the plan felt like it belonged to somebody else. The performing arts classes were easy, not because they required less work, but because I loved them. Scripts made sense. Characters made sense. Blocking made sense. I could spend hours rehearsing without noticing the passage of time. Sometimes I'd leave a studio at midnight feeling more energized than when I walked in. Then I'd open a biology textbook. Everything changed. The words blurred together. Nothing stuck. I reread pages 4 and 5 times before realizing I hadn't absorbed a single sentence. It wasn't laziness. It wasn't a lack of effort. If anything, I was trying too hard. Like I could force passion into existence through repetition. Like enough discipline could make me love something my heart had already rejected. It never worked. And lately, things had gotten worse. A lot worse. The week before spring break was brutal. The kind of week where every day felt like 3. My anatomy midterm was approaching. So was the biggest audition opportunity I'd gotten since arriving at NYU. Unfortunately, the universe had decided to schedule them on the exact same day. Thursday. Anatomy. Midterm. 9:00 a.m. Audition. Window. 10:00 a.m. to 1:00 p.m. Brooklyn. I checked the schedule so many times I practically memorized it. The times never changed. Neither did the panic. To make matters worse, I'd already received a warning from my academic advisor, Mr. West. 1 more failed class. 1. That was all it would take. My GPA would fall below the required threshold. My major would be reevaluated. My entire academic plan could collapse. The irony wasn't lost on me. The thing I never wanted was the thing keeping me trapped. And somehow I was failing at that too. As if the stress wasn't enough, our dorm room had become a revolving door. People were constantly coming in and out, talking, laughing, borrowing things, and returning things they should have returned 3 weeks ago. How anybody managed to study there remained a mystery. Knock, knock. A voice immediately followed. Girl, I thought you said you were doing my hair today. Ashley, already irritated, already loud. Chloe didn't even glance up. She sat cross-legged on her bed with a comb in one hand and edge control in the other. You still owe me money. Ashley rolled her eyes. It was 1 appointment. It was $40. I'll pay you on Friday. You said that last Friday. Ashley sighed dramatically. You act like you're running a business. I am running a business. Jasmine laughed from the floor. Ashley muttered something under her breath before finally leaving. The door slammed behind her. The room smelled like hair products and coconut oil. Bobby pins covered half the floor. Tuesdays were Chloe's busiest days, and by now she'd built a client list bigger than some actual salons. Girl, I looked up. Chloe pointed at me. If you don't stop pacing, you're gonna wear a hole through the floor. Jasmine nodded. Facts. I can't help it. You can. No, I can't. You absolutely can. I groaned and collapsed backward onto my bed. The ceiling stared back, unhelpful as always. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. The test. The audition. The everything. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. What if I miss my audition slot? What if traffic's bad? What if I fail the midterm? What if I fail both? Then you'll survive. I threw a pillow at her. She caught it without looking. Rude. Seriously. I am serious. Chloe twisted another section of Jasmine's hair while she thought. Then she snapped her fingers. Chris, I groaned louder. No, yes, no, absolutely yes. Just hearing his name exhausted me. Just hearing his name exhausted me. Freshman year, sophomore year, and half of junior year. Together. Not together. Together again. A relationship so confusing it practically needed subtitles. The biggest problem wasn't distance, schedules, or communication. It was Chris, specifically, his inability to understand the concept of exclusivity. And yet, whenever things truly mattered, he showed up, which somehow made everything worse. I don't want to ask him. Good. Chloe smiled. Because I'm asking him. Before I could stop her, she grabbed her phone. A minute later, she looked up. Done. What do you mean by done? I mean, he's picking you up after your exam. My eyes widened. You already called him? I already fixed it. Chloe? He said yes. Of course he did. She pointed her comb at me. I'll go early. Okay. I'll hold your place in line. Okay. Chris drives you over. I hesitated. The plan actually sounded possible. Not easy, not perfect, but possible. You sure? She nodded immediately. Trust me. I looked down at my anatomy flashcards, at the muscle groups and terminology I should have known by now. The words stared back at me, meaningless. All I could think about was how unfair it felt to fight this hard for something I loved, and still have to earn permission to keep it. Thursday arrived faster than I wanted. My alarm exploded at 7:30 a.m. I groaned, rolled over, and smacked my phone until the noise stopped. For one glorious second, everything was quiet. Then reality came back. The midterm, the audition, Mr. West, my GPA, my future. My chest tightened before my feet even touched the floor. I stared at the ceiling. Already exhausted. Chloe's bed was empty. Of course it was. She'd taken her last exam the day before and somehow managed to remain a functioning human throughout. Meanwhile, I looked like somebody who'd lost a fight with sleep and barely survived. A few minutes later, the doors swung open and Chloe walked in carrying an iced caramel latte like a woman delivering medicine to the critically ill. Peace offering. I accepted it immediately. Marry me. No. Rude. I have standards. I took a sip. The caffeine hit almost instantly. Not enough to fix my life, but enough to make me feel slightly less doomed. Big day, Chloe said. Don't remind me. You're gonna be fine. That's what people say when things are definitely not fine. She laughed. I wished I could. 30 minutes later, I was sitting outside my anatomy classroom with my textbook open, at least physically. Mentally, I was already in Brooklyn. The audition monologue replayed inside my head, every pause, every beat, every emotional turn. I could perform it in my sleep, unfortunately. Anatomy wasn't nearly as cooperative. Around me, students flipped through notes with varying levels of desperation. Some looked calm. Those people were either lying or dangerous. Most looked terrified. That felt more honest. Eventually, Professor Johnson arrived and the hallway immediately came alive. Backpacks zipped, books closed, people stood. I followed everyone inside. My hands moved automatically as I set out my laptop, got my student ID ready, and opened the exam screen. My brain remained somewhere else entirely. A text message appeared. I glanced down. Chloe, I'm in line. You're number 55, moving fast. My pulse jumped. Good. That was good. I immediately started calculating. If I finished by 10, if traffic cooperated, if nothing went wrong, another vibration. Chris, outside waiting. Despite everything, a smile almost escaped. Almost. Phone's off. Professor Johnson's voice sliced through the room. Unless you'd like an incomplete. The room obeyed instantly. I slid my phone away, stared at the first question, and felt the panic return. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of questions, diagrams, definitions, guessing, and more guessing. A growing sense of dread settled in my stomach as the clock kept moving faster than I wanted it to. I answered what I knew, skipped what I didn't, and promised myself I'd come back later. I never did. My leg bounced non-stop beneath the desk. My eyes kept drifting toward the clock, toward freedom, toward Brooklyn, toward the thing I actually cared about. By the time I reached the final page, my concentration was completely gone. I submitted the exam, stood, and walked to the front. Professor Johnson looked up and raised an eyebrow. You seem eager. I forced a polite smile. Something like that. I heard about your audition. Of course she had. Professors always knew everything. She leaned back in her chair. Shame you don't put this much energy into your major. The words hit exactly where she intended them to. I didn't respond. There wasn't anything left to say. Instead, I turned around and walked out. The second I stepped outside, I spotted Chris. His black BMW was parked illegally at the curb, naturally. He leaned across the passenger seat and pushed the door open. Get in. I didn't hesitate. The moment I sat down, he pulled away from the curb. Fast. Very fast. Chris, what? Slow down. I am slowing down. You absolutely are not. He grinned. I got you, Dani. Which was exactly the kind of thing somebody said before getting a speeding ticket. Still, I couldn't deny the relief. For the first time all morning, I felt like I might actually make it. Traffic moved. Lights cooperated. Miracles happened. By 11:28, we pulled up outside the audition building. Chloe was waiting near the entrance. The second she saw us, she checked her phone. They're on 51. My lungs finally worked again. You made it. I nearly hugged her hard enough to crack a rib. The waiting room felt colder than the rest of the building. Rows of nervous actors sat clutching headshots and resumes. Some rehearsed quietly. Some stared into space. Some looked like they might throw up. I understood all of them. Chris and Chloe stayed nearby, talking softly and giving me space. They didn't ask questions or add pressure. They were just there, the best kind of support. Eventually, a woman appeared holding a clipboard. Number 55. My heart stopped, then restarted, harder. They're ready for you. I stood, took one deep breath, and followed her inside. The room was smaller than I expected. 3 people sat behind a long table. No smiles, no introductions, just professional neutrality. Years of practice had taught me how to read audiences. These people gave away nothing. One of them glanced down at my paperwork before looking back up. Please introduce yourself and begin when you're ready. I nodded, walked to my mark, and planted both feet firmly on the floor. Ground yourself. Breathe. Focus. Just like every acting teacher I'd ever had drilled into me. My name is Dani Rivera. My number is 55. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I inhaled, then started. The first line left my mouth and everything changed. The room disappeared. The judges disappeared. The pressure disappeared. Suddenly, it was just me and the story. The characters stepped forward and Dani stepped back. Every word landed where it needed to. Every pause felt natural. Every emotion arrived at exactly the right moment. Nothing was forced. Nothing was manufactured. I wasn't performing anymore. I was living inside the scene. For 5 minutes, I forgot about anatomy. I forgot about nursing. I forgot about expectations. I forgot about the version of myself everyone else seemed determined to build. I only remembered who I was. When the monologue ended, silence followed. Real silence. The kind actors dream about. The kind that means people are still processing what they just saw. One of the judges finally looked up. "Thank you." I waited. Nothing else came. "We'll contact you if you're selected for the next round." That was it. No feedback, no clues, no indication whether I'd just impressed them or completely embarrassed myself. The uncertainty was brutal, but underneath it was something else. Relief, because for 5 minutes I'd gotten to be exactly where I belonged. When I stepped back into the waiting area, Chris and Chloe were sitting together laughing at something on Chloe's phone. They looked comfortable, easy, like old friends. When Chloe noticed me, she immediately stood. "Well?" I let out a breath. "It went well. You sure?" "No," she laughed. "That's the correct answer." I smiled despite myself. "What were you two doing?" Chris shrugged. "Watching videos?" "Terrifying. Your generation is so judgmental. We're the same age." Details. A few minutes later, we headed outside. The sun felt warmer now. The city seemed louder. Everything felt lighter. For the first time all day, I thought maybe things would be okay. Then my phone buzzed. "Mr. West, we need to talk. I'll be in my office until 7. Make this a priority." My stomach dropped immediately. Just like that, the feeling vanished. "What happened?" Chloe had noticed my face. I showed her the screen. Neither of them said anything. They didn't have to. We all knew what it probably meant. The ride back was quieter. Chris glanced over as we merged into traffic. "You know they're calling you back." "What?" "For the next round." I rolled my eyes. "You don't know that?" "I do." "You literally don't." "I do." His confidence would have been annoying if it weren't so comforting. "You killed it." I stared out the window as Brooklyn blurred past. "So," he continued, "before your advisor ruins everyone's mood, you want to get food?" That actually earned a laugh. "Food does solve a lot of problems." "Exactly. Can we stop for wings?" He pointed dramatically. "See? That's growth. That's hunger." An hour later, we were back in the car. Half-eaten takeout sat between us, and nobody was talking much anymore. The closer we got to campus, the heavier everything felt. "You good?" Chloe's voice came softly from the back seat. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. The tears arrived first. Fast, silent, unstoppable. I turned toward the window. Embarrassed, exhausted, and done pretending. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody told me to calm down. They just let me cry. And honestly, that helped more. Because I wasn't crying about the exam or the audition or even Mr. West. I was crying because I was tired. Tired of living inside a compromise. Tired of pretending everything made sense. Tired of chasing approval that never seemed close enough to reach. My phone sat heavy in my lap. The leave of absence form was still there. Completed. Unsigned, waiting. Mr. West had sent it weeks ago, just in case. At the time, I'd laughed. Now it felt less like paperwork and more like a lifeline. "Why are you studying something you don't care about?" His question echoed in my head. I hadn't answered it then because I didn't have an answer. At least not one that belonged to me. Family. Expectation. Sacrifice. Those were explanations, not reasons. The truth was harder. I was scared. Scared of disappointing my parents. Scared of losing their support. Scared that choosing myself might cost more than I could afford. Next week, they were coming to visit. At least that was the official reason. But deep down, I knew better. The conversation we'd avoided for years was finally catching up to us. And I wasn't sure any of us were ready for it. I stared at my reflection in the passenger window. The city blurred behind it. For a moment, I barely recognized the girl looking back. Then my phone buzzed again. Another notification. I looked down and felt my stomach fall. Midterm result. Incomplete. Too many questions left blank. No retake. The world seemed to stop. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The screen dimmed, then went dark. And just like that, everything I'd spent years balancing finally collapsed. Compromise, the plan, the future everyone had built for me. Gone. Leaving only one terrifying question behind. What happens when the life you've been holding together finally refuses to hold you anymore?
That ceiling that you'll never